Guys, guten Morgen aus Deutschland, good morning from Germany. I apologize for the voice, but the pollen are bad. And so, yeah. All right, so on my other channel in the comment section, we were talking about deer. And that is because I mentioned deer and one of my experiences with them in a video. And so instead of continuously writing in the comment section because it cracked a few people up how I call deer a-holes, I'm gonna make a video about it here. And so imagine me being a city person, and in January 2007, I moved to the States, into the country. And so I had no idea what animals were living there. And this is a whole thing, but in this video, I'm going to stick to the deer. Or while we're at it, I might as well tell you experiences with black bears as well. All those years in Germany, when we went for walks in forests, when we saw a deer, it was a special thing. It was almost like a magical creature, and I thought they were cute. But as soon as I got to the States and we went for walks, I mean, it was pretty much the same. And I thought, wow, they look the same here. And it was always a special thing to see them. But when I mentioned it to locals, they would already call them a-holes. And the real word for it, not the child's version. And so I asked them why they're cute animals, and then they told me how these these animals just run towards cars in the middle of the night. They see headlights and they run towards them, and I thought they can't be that stupid. But I stayed in the States for 11 years. For the most part, I lived in Virginia. It was a wooded area. It was way out in the boonies. It took me 45 minutes to get to the next Walmart, and so you can imagine how far out there I lived. And so one thing I remember, it was one of my first personal encounters with deer, was imagine driving on a two-lane road, a state road, in the middle of the night. And I was going up a hill, and I was coming home from an evening shift, and all of a sudden I saw two red dots, reflecting my headlights, and then I realized that was a deer. That deer was in the middle of the road in my lane. Now imagine two lanes, a state road, and you can't see, like, is there a ditch on the right or a ditch on the left? And I didn't know the area well enough, and so I just knew I was in the middle of the forest on a state road, with a deer directly in front of me. And of course, with my high beams on, I saw it from not afar, but from a pretty good distance. And so I slowed down. That thing stood there as if it was frozen in time. It did not move one bit. I saw it from the side, and it had its face turned towards me. So I'm thinking, okay, it's in the middle of the night. I can't call anyone to ask, what am I supposed to do now? And so I started thinking logically. I thought, okay, so I don't want to bother that deer. I don't want to startle it. And so I instantly turned down the high beams, and I slowed down to almost a crawl. That thing did not move at all. And so I kept coming closer and closer. I only had the driving lights on, not even the regular headlights, but just the driving lights, right? And I kept like crawling towards him and or her, and that thing just wouldn't move, right? And so the whole thing took like so many minutes, where I started thinking, okay, I gotta get home. This is ridiculous. This thing won't move. I leaned out of the window to clap my hands to startle it so that it would run back into the woods. But that didn't do anything. That thing literally looked like it was frozen in time. And so I started moving towards it in the car. I started moving towards it, still with my only driving lights on, which is pretty dark in the middle of the night in the woods. There are no street lights, you know. And so I was going towards it, it still wouldn't move. And so I swayed left to pass it by on the other lane, right? And as soon as I did, that thing still didn't move, but as soon as I did, and my car was about, I don't know, 6 feet away from it, it started running and jumping, like like it started running towards the left, like towards, the woods, but it hit my car. As I was crawling my way around that thing, it started running and it panicked and it went over the hood of my car. It damaged um, the front bumper. And the next day, when I assessed the damage, there was blood on it. There was fur on it, and I do not understand how stupid an animal has to be to do that. I showed no signs of threatening that thing until I clapped. I didn't even blow my horn or anything, right? I just wanted to get by it, and it just stood there. And instead of making its move, like I was waiting there, waiting for it to make its move, to go back into the woods, like realizing, yeah, I'm not liking this at all. But it was just frozen and started running as soon as I was closest to it. And that was surreal. And I figured, what am I going to do next time this happens? And I could never come up with a good idea. Another time was when I was on a 4-lane highway, again at night, and me and my boyfriend were going to go grab dinner, and that town was about 40 minutes away. I mean, that was the closest town. And so we were on a 4-lane highway with a median. And the only way what I'm about to tell you happened, could have happened, is by another person coming in the opposite direction, startling a deer, and that's why it did what it did. So I was talking to my boyfriend, I was driving because he had to drive to work for hours every single day. And so at night, of course, I suggested I'm going to. So we're going down a 4-lane highway, 2 lanes in each direction, and a median between. And I saw, something going on the far left. But when you're going 60 miles an hour, you don't really see all that much. And I had reached a point that was about 10 years into me being in the States, reached a point where you can't go down the highway going 25 just because a deer could run out in front of you. And so I was going 60 and I saw something out the corner of my eye on the other 2 lanes going on, but there was a hill in the median, and so I couldn't continue seeing what was going on. And so I kept going, and when I had reached the end of that grass hill, a deer came running with its head down towards my car and hit the side of my car. So that thing must have been started by another car going in the opposite direction, and then hitting my car on the side. That thing caused so much damage on my car. I mean, it must have, like, imagine its head hitting my car, the side of my car, and just scraping along the entire side of the car. I do not know how that happened. And so we stopped and we walked back and we didn't see it anywhere. And with the other one where I told you I saw blood um, on my on my bumper, I called the sheriff's office and I said, "Can you call animal control or whoever? Some deer just," and I told them the story and they laughed, and they called them a-holes too, because these deers they cause so much damage to vehicles. It's not even funny anymore. But what I liked is I lived in a cottage way out in the boonies, and there was a pine tree forest. I don't know how far away. I mean, I could see it, and I always watched the sunset behind it almost every night that I could. And when I looked out my kitchen window and I was doing my dishes, like in the States, a lot of sinks are right in front of the window, and I love that. And so I was doing my dishes, and there were deer grazing in in front of the window. I mean, not directly in front of the window because I was making noises doing the dishes, but I could watch them just graze peacefully. I mean, that alone was just amazing. And that is also the time when it hit me that deer look like kangaroos only on 4 feet. Look at them and tell me if I'm completely off. But as soon as I had that thought, I couldn't unthink it. And so, still to this day, when I see deer, I think, yeah, that's a kangaroo head. And yeah, and another thing was we had moved from the cottage to another house, and I was going outside to smoke a cigarette. And when I did, as soon as I opened the front door, then the screen door, and I'm not a very loud person. I don't go through life very loudly, so I don't slam doors. And so I quietly opened the front door, then the screen door, and I closed them quietly behind me. And when I did this one time, there was a dark brown deer in front of me in the yard. And I don't know how far away. I'm really bad at guessing, but maybe like 50 feet. And it just stood there frozen, but picture perfect. I'm gonna see if I can find a picture like that. And he had big antlers and he was dark brown. I had never seen a dark brown um, deer before. It was a buck, right? And so I just stood there and I took in what he looked like, and I didn't do anything. And of course, I didn't have a gun. I would never hunt, which I don't bash it because a lot of people need to hunt. And I later on also learned about animal control and how they have to thin out the amount of deers, otherwise they go insane. And so I just stood there for quite a few seconds. I didn't light my cigarette. I just looked at him and thought, wow, the eyes, it's amazing, and the color of the fur, and how graciously he stood there, like picture perfect, right? But then after a while, that got old, and I wanted to smoke my cigarette, and so I lit the lighter. It was a big lighter, the one uh, with the wheel, right? Not an electric lighter or not a storm lighter. And they're not that loud, but as soon as I clicked it, that buck took off, and he took off towards the highway. I mean, the state road, right? And this was during the day. This was not at night. And so I was just praying that he wouldn't get hit, but I didn't hear anything. And I also walked up to the state road to see, and nothing had happened to him. And so apparently he was fast enough. But I gotta tell you guys, I love animals, but there are some that I don't know should be supervised when they're out in the wilderness, because I saw them do things that are completely crazy. I mean, just start running. So many deer started running, like they look towards you. You see them in the ditch. Let's say you're going down a dark state road in the middle of the night, and you see uh, on the right side of the road, off the road, I mean right next to the road, you see red reflecting eyes. I was often hoping that it's not a pair of red reflecting eyes that are sitting low, because that could have been a possum, and what their sharp teeth do with tires, even when they're dead already, is ridiculous. I've never had it happen to any of my cars, but they can slice a tire open when you run over a possum. This is how sharp the teeth are. And So, but you see the deers looking at you, like in your direction. Of course, they can't see anything. All they see is just a set of headlights coming towards them. But instead of just waiting it out, just standing there, not making a move and waiting until these very bright lights. I mean, often you drive around with high beams at night in order to see the deer ahead of time so that you can slow down. But they will wait until you're like closer and then they start running, possibly even towards you. And that is something I never understood. I could not get how stupid they are, and so many lost their lives. And I also talked to one of the game wardens in Virginia where I lived, and I said, "What is going on with these animals?" And he said their brains are not very big. They can't think logically, of course, and their instincts might not be very good. Otherwise, they wouldn't get into situations like that. But I heard of so many people. I mean, these experiences I just told you about were only made by me during my time of 11 years in the States, but I heard of so many stories, and it's just amazing what these deer what they do. And especially between dusk and dawn, it is a nightmare to drive way out in the boonies because these things will just come out of the brush and just hit your car, take out headlights, and then it's a hazard for you to drive because you can't see, but you can't spend the night out you know in nature just because one of your headlights is out. And so I'm not a fan of deers anymore, and I still call them a-holes up to this day. And so yeah, I thought I'd make this recording instead of continuously typing over on my other channel in the comment section. But again, I love the way they look. I don't wish anything bad on anybody or anything. But the deers were a nuisance in Virginia. Oh my gosh. And also, there were black bears, and what they did, like there were wildfires or forest fires, I don't know the difference. Yeah, okay, so I just looked it up, and so it seems that the word wildfire has replaced the word forest fire. But because of all the wildfires in Virginia, also, that limits the habitat of the bears. And so the bears, they mainly eat plants. And so they they have to find plants. Now, if there's been a fire, there are no plants growing, not for a whole while. And so their habitat keeps changing along with the areas of wildfires, right? And so I saw a whole bunch of them while I was in the States. But this one time I thought, wow, I hope this never happens to me. So I know most of my viewers are in the United States, but for those of you that are not, when you're in the States, there are a lot of pickup trucks, not so much POVs, uh, um, cars, standard size cars, but mainly out in the country, of course, pickup trucks. And so this one day I went to the local convenience store and I got myself something I can't remember, but they were talking like very loudly about something that had just happened. So I said, "What's going on with you guys?" And they said that during the day on that four-lane highway where I told you earlier, that deer came running or running towards the side of my car with its head down. Um, a bear crossed the road and that thing ran, it charged towards a pickup truck that was going 60 miles an hour. And that bear was hit and shot right away because it was severely hurt. And so thank God it was one of the people, um, a hunter maybe. And so they shot him right away. and it turned out it was a 450-pound black bear, and they had to get all kinds of equipment to get him off the highway, to lift him up because he was so heavy. And that truck was sitting out in the parking lot of that convenience store, and that truck was damaged. I mean, that bear did damage to that truck. And so these are the things that when you've grown up in the city and all of a sudden you live in the country, um, they make your eyebrows go up, and there are things that you have to pay attention to that you never had to pay attention to before. Another experience with a deer, and that was I was working for a company where the president of the company was like a singer. Like imagine her like Doris Day, only a little overweight, but she had a voice that would put the respect for the human race into your heart instantly. Somewhat like what felt like to me like Whitney Houston, only with the Doris Day voice, right? Okay, so she was gonna have her last performance in front of a, I don't want to say large audience, a few hundred people, where I was almost also invited. And she kept saying to me, I'm going to be so nervous. She was around 60 at the time, right? And she also, I don't want to give her name, but she was also singing at the Kennedy Center several New Year's Eves over the decades. And so yeah, she said, I'm going to be so nervous. I don't know if I can do it. I'm getting too old for this. And I said, well, you're a lover of wine, you love wine. Would that calm you down enough to not be nervous anymore, but at the same time make it possible for you to still perform without slurring your speech? And she said, yeah, but I still gotta drive home. And I said, well, here's a crazy offer. You're gonna leave your Jeep at home. We're gonna take my car, and I'm gonna take you there. And this was in the evening, so again, in Virginia, between dusk and dawn, right? And she said, "Yeah, I don't want to go in a car though. What if we come across stairs?" And I said, "I could drive you cheap. It's up to you. It's completely up to you." And so, long story short, she decided, sure, let's take my Jeep. And so she drove there because, of course, she was still sober, and then she had a few glasses of wine, and then she was good to go. The performance went great, and so in the middle of the night she was completely shot, I mean drunk by that time, and she didn't even want to leave. It must have been like 1 in the morning or something, and I said, look, I gotta get home, I have family, and it's been a long day, preparing the venue for that whole whatever. And so I finally convinced her to go. And instantly, as soon as we got into the car, she said, "Oh my God, let's not run into any deers." And I said, "Don't make me any more nervous than I am. I know they're a-holes. I know." And so we were still on the road, like almost like the driveway towards the venue, but of course in the opposite direction, facing, the state road. When I saw on the left side, that strip right next to the road, I saw a buck as big as not before, not after that did I see a buck this big. He was so tall, he had such large antlers, and I just looked at him, and she said, "Oh my God, oh my gosh," kept saying that, "Oh my God, oh my God." I said, "You got to be quiet. We have to wrap this Jeep into a bubble of protection, so manifest that for us as I'm inching my way um, past this buck, or towards the buck, and then past the buck." And so I did. And when I was about, again, I'm bad at guesstimating, but maybe 50 feet away, maybe 100 feet. Yeah, it might have been 100 feet. That thing put, and the entire time he didn't move. I just saw his red reflective eyes, and he just looked in our direction but didn't move, which is part of the reason why I think they're really dumb. And so he just looked in our direction, but as soon as we came closer, he put his head down and faced it towards the opposite side of the road where I would have to go. It was almost, I swear to God, guys, it was almost like he was aiming to hit the Jeep as soon as it would pass it by. And so again, I told her to shut up because she wouldn't shut up. She said that this bug is gonna hit us. And I was crawling. I wasn't even going 15 miles an hour. And the reason I know that is because that is how far you got to go on that driveway. And so, yeah, so I was inching my way towards that buck. He puts the head down and I floored that Jeep. I floored it because they are so dumb. They will hit a car on purpose, it seems, but they're that dumb. The first one is when we first got to the States, we were living with my in-laws, with my ex-in-laws, and they had two peacocks. One was a female in white, and one was the male in, the green, blue colors. And they would always walk around the yard and they would eat the ticks, which is nice. The ticks or whatever other insects, right? And so they had been there for a while and they basically belonged to that property. My ex-in-laws were feeding them and stuff like that. And so one night, or the next morning, I was told that a bear had tried to rip open the steel cage of a rabbit that they also had. They were just feeding him. They weren't raising rabbits to slaughter them and eat them. And so that bear tried to rip and bend open a steel door of a rabbit cage that was not meant as a rabbit cage. It was more like a big steel structure that they had built, that they had put together, and that bear was capable of bending that door. But apparently, maybe he hurt himself, and so he figured, yeah, it's not worth it. I can't get to that rabbit, right? And the next night, he did something else, and I can't remember. And my ex-father-in-law already said, I'm gonna get out there with my rifle. I'm gonna shoot him tonight. And he did come around, but I can't remember why he took back off. So that second night, nothing happened. But the third night, when we got up, for me to get my daughter ready for school, my ex-mother-in-law was crying and my ex-father-in-law was crying. And that was because that bear came back the third night. There was a garden gate, and that's where the peacocks roosted every night, next to each other, the female and the male, right? And so that bear came around, and while the male peacock was sleeping, he plucked him off that gate, and he ripped his head off, ripped open his chest. The Oh my gosh, guys, it still gets to me. He butchered that poor peacock. There were feathers all over the yard. I mean, for so many square feet, there were feathers and chunks of meat. You know what I'm saying? And he didn't have, and it wasn't that he was hungry, because if he had been hungry, he would have eaten that bird, but he didn't. He just butchered him. And the really bad thing about that is that his girlfriend, the white peacock, was mourning for him for weeks on end. Every single day you could hear this really pathetic crying, and she was walking around in parts of the yard where they hadn't even gone together just to look for him, and it was so heart-wrenching. It was really bad. So that was the first time I heard about a bear. And then, of course, they told me, because I would frequently go for walks in the woods, but only on trails. They told me that you never get between the cubs and the mother because she will rip you apart. And so I might have seen a black bear here and there, but only from a distance, and they would never come close. Um, here and there you would see them run across the highway or whatever, but never to where they would stand and just look at you like the deers did. And I never saw them at night. I only saw them during the day crossing the highway. And when we went up to the Skyline Drive, like the national park. Up there, they know that they don't get hunted, and so they will stand like you see it in videos on YouTube. They will stand if in the middle of the road and just look at the cars, like, huh, you can't do anything because I'm in a national park. It's not like they're aware of it, but it surely seems like they are. And so another time, that could have gone so bad. It was my daughter, and I feel bad because it's actually her story to tell. But it was my daughter um, taking a dog for a walk, and that was we were living with my ex-husband, and his dog was a rotten pit. And so I'll show you a picture here. He's not alive anymore. But we would take him for walks on a daily basis. He was like in a pen, where he was guarding the chickens. And I, at one point in time, I told the story about the skunk that would get in the chicken pen. And yeah, so he was guarding the livestock. And so I would take him for a walk every single day, and I would let him run, and I would run with him. And that actually, you got to watch your weight when you're in the States because the food is different, is all I'm going to say here. And so that day, my daughter took him for a walk, and of course, she would do it during the day, before the sun went down, because you never know what comes out of the brush, right? And we were living like in front, like right next to the national park, where again, a lot of wildlife was that wasn't hunted. And so, okay, so my daughter takes that rotten pit for a walk, and all of a sudden I hear screaming. Like minutes after she had left, I was at home and I wasn't listening to music or anything. Whenever she left the house to walk him, like usually we do it together, but that day we didn't. I wanted to be able to hear if anything is going on, because chickens, for example, they alert you when there's something going on, or the dog would bark or growl, and then you would know it's on. You gotta go and check out what's going on. And so I heard my daughter screaming, and so I ran out of the house. And that's when I saw my ex-husband get in his pickup truck and floor that sucker to get down the driveway. He had a better understanding of the acoustics because he had been living there for longer. And so he knew that the screams were coming from like the bottom of the hill on his driveway. And so he floored that pickup truck down that driveway and actually scared away a bear that was challenging not only my daughter, and again, brightest day outside, that was not only challenging my daughter, but also the dog she was holding on a leash. And that dog had sense enough to not try and attack that bear. He just barked and growled at him, but he didn't like go at him, right? And so when my ex-husband came down that driveway, and they told me this, I wasn't there to see it, because my ex-husband flew into that pickup truck and didn't put on a seatbelt or anything, but just floored um, that truck to get down to where my daughter was screaming, and the dog was howling and growling. And so, yeah, they scared off that black bear. And so, for those of you on my other channel that said in the comment section that bear don't come close to humans, think again. Because while I was in the States, people told me that that is actually not a common thing. And my ex-husband told me this too. He said, this is not common, this is an exception, but they still do it. And so when I see Chantal, or not Amber, she doesn't leave the house. And if she does, she's sitting her ass in a car and then in a restaurant a booth. But Chantal out there in the wildlife, that's why I said that, because I've seen things like that. And so yeah, that's basically it for the deers and the bear. Deer and bear, I guess the plural of deer is still deer. And the bears during my 11 years in the States. I have so many more stories, but I can never like sit here for hours on end and tell them. Maybe I should, here and there. But this is it from me for today. Thank you for listening to this, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.